Hello, fifth graders. Today we're going to look at simplifying fractions. I'm going to start off with a picture because I think it really helps things make sense. And we'll start with a nice familiar one. So first off, I'm going to draw one whole square. So here's one square. Now if I take this square and cut it into two of the same size pieces and shade one of those pieces, the fraction for the amount of this whole that's shaded would be 1/2, right? Because one out of the two pieces it's divided up into is shaded. Now taking the same whole, I can draw a line right through it there, and now the same amount shaded, right? But if I asked you to tell me what fraction represents this, you would tell me that 2 out of 4 pieces are shaded. So we can say that these two right here, these are equivalent fractions because they represent the same amount of the whole that's shaded, right? Only one of those is in simplest form though. And here's your test for how you can tell if it's in simplest form. A fraction is in simplest form if 1 is the only common factor of its numerator and denominator. Well, first off, you need to know a numerator, that's the top number in the fraction, denominator, bottom number in the fraction. And when we say common factor, factors are numbers that we multiply together to get a product. So in looking at these, if I look at what are the factors of my numerator and denominator in this, well, the factors of 1, what numbers can I multiply together to get 1? Well, 1 times 1. Is there anything else? Nope. To get 2, I can take 1 times 2. Is there anything else? No. So when you look at both of these, 1 is the only factor that they have in common. This numerator doesn't have a 2. So 1 is the only factor that they have in common. That means that 1/2 is simplest form. 2/4 is not simplest form, and I'll show you why. The factors of 2, I can get 2 by taking 1 times 2. We said that, right? Now to get 4, I can do two different things. I can take 1 times 4. I could also do 2 times 2, right? So 2 times 2. Either of those will give me 4. So that means that 1, 4, and 2 are all factors of 4. Do you see how these factors have, or these numbers have both 1 and 2 in common? Because they have 2 in common, that means this is not in simplest form because they have a factor other than 1 that divides into each of them. So when you're trying to figure out if something is in simplest form, you have to look at what the factors of the digits are and see, is 1 the only factor that they have in common? And today I'll show you how to do that. Your multiplication facts are going to be very, very helpful. And some of you'll be able to just look at these and you'll kind of know, if you can look at them and know what's the largest number that divides into both, that's kind of a little shortcut. I'm going to take the long way because I'm assuming that we don't have as much background knowledge as we would if we were, let's say, 6th graders. Okay, so again, fractions in simplest form is if 1 is the only common factor of its numerator and denominator. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out what are the factors of each, okay? So I see 6, I see 18. Let's start with the 6 here. Okay, so when I look at the 6, I know that I can take 1 times 6 to get 6. So that means that 1 and 6 are factors of 6 because 1 times 6 is 6. Another way to get 6, I can do 2 times 3. So that means that 2 and 3 are factors of 6. I don't think there are any more factors of 6, and the factors wouldn't be larger than 6. So I know I can stop there. 4, I can't multiply 4 by anything to get 6. So I think we're good. So there's our factors of 6. Now I want the factors of 18. We of course can take 1 times 18 to get 18. So 1 and 18 are factors of 18. Another way to get 18, I can do 9 times 2, or all right, 2 times 9. That means that 2 and 9 are factors of 18. And another way I can get 18, I can do 6 times 3. So that means that 6 and 3 are factors of 18. There aren't any more. I can't have anything larger than the 18, and there aren't any other numbers I can multiply together to get 18. So what I want to do is I want to look and see, do they have any numbers in common besides the ones? Well, I see they do have a 1 in common. There's a 6 here, and there's a 6 here. So right off the bat, I know that's not in simplest form because they have factors other than 1 in common. I see a 2 here. There's also a 2 here. They have those in common. There is a 3 here and a 3 here. This doesn't have an 18 or a 9. So we know right now that this is not in simplest form. So how do we put it into simplest form? Well, what we do is we look for the greatest common factor and divide both the numerator and denominator by it. So by greatest common factor, greatest, which one is the highest digit that they have in common? So when I look at this, I know that they have 1, 6, 2, and 3 in common. The highest digit among those is 6. So they have both of them have 6 in common. So the way to simplify this, I'm going to divide each numerator and denominator by that greatest common factor. So that means I want to do, I'm going to rewrite it over here, 6/18. I want to take 6 and divide it by 6, and 18 and divide it by 6. And you've seen this before. If I'm dividing by a 6 over a 6, it's like dividing by 1. We're not really changing the value here. We're just making it simpler. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. 18 divided by 6 is 3. That is the simplest form of 6/18. 1/3 is the simplest form. And kind of picture it this way. If I had a whole and I divided it up into 18 pieces, and 6 of them are shaded, it would end up simplifying down to just 1/3 of those pieces. The same way 2/4 is the same as 1/2. So 1/3 is equivalent to 6/18. 1/3 is the simplest form. So basically, if you can figure out the largest factor that they have in common, all you have to do is divide that into each numerator and denominator, and it's smooth sailing. Okay, so for 10/15, I'm going to look at the factors of each. So the factors of 10, 1 times 10 is 10, 2 times 5 is 10. I can't think of any other pairs of numbers I can multiply together to get 10. For 15, 1 times 15 is 15. 3 times 5 is 15. There aren't any other numbers I can multiply together to get 15 whole numbers together. So when I look at these two lists here, I see, yes, they do have 1 in common, but the highest digit that they both have in common is 5. So in order to simplify 10/15, I'm going to divide my numerator and my denominator both by the greatest common factor. So that means I'm going to take 10 divided by 5 to get 2, and 15 divided by 5 to get 3. 2/3 is the simplest form of 10 and 15. And 2 and 3, the largest factor that they have in common is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 is the only one they have in common. Now, another way to look at this, you could look at, because factors will also divide evenly into its product. Okay? So you can look at what's the largest number that would divide into both without a remainder. And that can also help you jump right to that. So with 20/25, I might look at this and say, okay, well, I know 1 goes into both of those. 2 doesn't go into both. 3, 4, 5 goes into 20 and 25. So if I look at 20 and 25 and I can see that, hey, 5 is the largest number that will divide evenly into both of those, I can jump right to it and take 20 divided by 5 and 25 divided by 5. 20 divided by 5 is 4. 25 divided by 5 is 5. 4/5 is my simplest form. Now, if we listed out all the factors, we can do that, and you'll end up seeing that 5 is the highest factor that they have in common. It's the greatest common factor, the GCF, you'll hear it said as. So that's another way to do that, and that's where knowing your multiplication facts is really helpful. Okay, let's try another one. I have 14/21. Ask yourself, What is the largest number that will divide evenly, no remainders, into both 14 and 21? I'm hoping that you're thinking of your 7 facts. 7, 14, 21, 28. 7 goes into both of those. Maybe it's not the largest. I'll tell you how to check that shortly. So I'm going to try 7. And notice it has to be the same exact digit. If you divided this by 7 and this by 3, you're not going to get an equivalent fraction. The only way you get an equivalent fraction is dividing them each by the same. So 14 divided by 7 is 2. 21 divided by 7 is 3. Now to make sure that it's the largest number that divides into both, I just look at 2/3 and ask myself, is there a number that would divide into 2 and 3 other than 1? No. That means that 2/3 is already in simplest form. Last one, I have 8/10. What's the largest number that will divide evenly into 8 and 10? Well, they're both even, so I know 2 will go into both of them evenly. So let's try 2. I'm going to do 8 divided by 2 and 10 divided by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now I'm looking at 4/5. Is there a number other than 1 that will divide evenly into 4 and 5? No. So that means 4/5 is in simplest form. So if you're not seeing it like this, if you don't see from your multiplication facts the largest number that will divide into both, then go ahead and list out the factors of each and find the largest factor that they have in common and divide each by that. And after a while, you'll probably be able to move right down to this and you'll see those ones that you see all the time. Good luck.